Welcome to Saturdays and Stories, the podcast about college football fans, the moments that made them fans, and the campuses they call home. I'm Sean, and today we're talking to Dave Jones about the University of Pittsburgh. So, Dave, tell me, when did it first start for you?
So I'd almost say it was destined. Um, uh, our uncle who raised my brother and I in central Pennsylvania ended up going to Robert Morris in Pittsburgh for college, and that was back during Pitt's heyday in the mid to late 70s. So he just instantly became a Pitt fan at that time, and I wasn't even born until 1980. So it's like the moment I ended up back in Pennsylvania, I was going to be a Pitt fan. Not the same for my brother, obviously, as you know, Sean, but it was when he started taking us to games at a very young age. I always pride myself in the fact that because he had season tickets, Earl always had 4 season tickets right on the 50-yard line, 11th row, on the pit side, and, I'd spend my falls there. Every Saturday home game, we were there, and I say I pride myself that unless I'm mistaken, my brother, who has the elephant memory, could always correct me, but I'm pretty sure I didn't miss a home game from age 5, so kindergarten, until my sophomore year at Pitt, like, through my sophomore year, and then when I stopped going to Pitt after my sophomore year, I kinda life took me in a different direction, and I couldn't make every game, but we were always going to games as kids. Sean and I with Earl were always going, and, and Earl was a very avid sports fan in general, any sport, baseball, huge Pirates fan, football, Pitt, Steelers, basketball, Pitt fan, hockey, Penguins, obviously. So sports was a big part of our childhood, and Pitt was the core of it. Pitt was really what he loved, them and the Steelers, but he loved football. So when we would go to those games on Saturday, plus Pitt games were much more affordable than Steeler games. So
Yeah,
taking, 2 kids, paying for them to eat and turnpike tolls, all that stuff, it was cheaper for him to take us to Pitt games, and he could still do what he loved and bring us along. So I was just hooked in the beginning. The band, the colors, the colors they're using today is the colors they were using back then. So it was just it was awe-inspiring as a little kid to see that college atmosphere because 'cause I'd never been to another college game. We didn't start traveling till we were a little bit older. Like, I keep a spreadsheet of all the away games I've been to now. I've been to 23 different college venues, stadiums, whatever you wanna call them, and really started hitting it hard in 2012, but I'd went to ones, with Sean and Earl back in the day, but we didn't really do that until, we were much older, so Pitt Stadium was it. That's all I knew of football. I didn't go to a Penn State game until I was, oh god, 37, I think, something like that. Hadn't been to Beaver Stadium, but I just to answer your question, long-winded answer there, it was definitely that college experience that we've all, anybody that's listening to this podcast, you've, watched college, games, you've likely been to a game, you're likely a huge fan of a particular team and hopefully have been to the stadium of, the home field of your favorite team. That experience, there's no other sporting event that matches it, at least that I've been to, and I've been to a lot. And college, if you're into that team and you're in their home stadium and the crowd's going and, back then Pitt would have some crowds, some games they wouldn't, some games they would. And Pitt Stadium was much smaller than Heinz Field is. So they were able to fill it a
mhm.
lot more, more often than they can do at Heinz Field. So it stuck and it's never going to go away. I'm going to die
and
with these
that's
colors.
and that's the reason why I want to create this show for people like you who, no matter what the score is on the scoreboard, you're still watching every Saturday. Even though you might not be in person now, but you're still tuned in, you still bleed blue and gold, and it'll always be that way. That's exactly what I wanna learn causes those things for each school.
And real quick, you said about not seeing him in person. Other than the COVID year, I've seen an away pick game every year, even the past 6 years that I've been in Florida. I go to an away game
Yeah,
every year.
I try to do the same. Life gets in the way sometimes, we can
Yep.
understand that. So, let's go ahead and move on to like what a typical Pitt Saturday is. I know they play in Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, uh, where the Steelers play.
Mhm.
Tell me what that's like.
Well, it's definitely different, and I'm sure that most of the viewers of your, program here are going to be more familiar with programs that play on traditional, at traditional stadiums on campus. And most of the traveling I do is to stadiums that are on campus. Pitt, Temple, I think Temple still plays at Lincoln Field where the Eagles
Hmm.
play. Tulane used to play at an NFL stadium. Now they don't. USF does. They play at Tampa Buccaneers Stadium right now,
Until
although they're
next
building
year.
their own stadium here. Yep. So, it's definitely different. Just to first answer your question, for the longest time since 2006, up until I left Pittsburgh in 2019, when I was going in with Earl on his season tickets, I would park at a Verizon CO up on the north side, so I didn't have to pay for parking. It's about a mile walk down underneath the train trestle into the or truss into the parking lot there by the Clark Building, kind of coming down in that way under that train track there. There was still the tailgating because the environment's still set up for tailgating because obviously the Steelers play there and NFL's huge on tailgating. So you still have the tailgating experience. You'd have the games, Central Western PA, love cornhole. So definitely still going on there. Music, you got the Pitt fans, you get an away fan, group in there, when you have the games, but it wasn't the same as watching games at Pitt Stadium. You had
Yeah.
cardiac hill, so when I was on campus, I stayed down, in one of the suites right by those, freshman towers you see when you go through campus, and when you would get up Saturday morning to go to the game, you'd have to walk up Cardiac Hill. So that was an experience for a lot of fans who didn't have parking up top. Earl had parking up top for his season tickets, so we would always tailgate up at the top there on the other side, the top half of the stadium, and then we could just walk down to the stadium because the stadium was set up like a bowl. So the top part you'd enter from the top and walk down. The bottom part you come in from the bottom, you'd have to go up to get to your seats.
Okay. And what
So
year did they switch?
I wanna say it was 2000 because
Okay.
I was there when Three River Stadium was,
Hmm.
demolished. So I'm thinking that they moved in when Heinz Field was built. I could be wrong there, but I'm
Okay.
almost thinking the timing was close. Um, I can't remember, unfortunately to answer your question there, Sean,
Yeah.
but it's gotta be close.
Do you
I
remember the
don't
first opponent they played in Heinz Field? I didn't know if they had a marquee game or to
Yeah, I mean, if they
re
did, again, I don't my brother got all the memory
yeah.
from the 2 of us, just like he got all the cooking skills. It's ha I'm al man, I wanna say it was 2001 is probably the first year
Yeah.
because they finished the 2000 was
Seems right.
last year Steelers played at Heinz Field because I was there for that game. That game, I think, was against the Redskins, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but I was there working security in 2000 at the last Steeler game, and then I got up because I was living on the north side and watched Three River Stadium get imploded.
Yeah.
So I was there. That it was a very cold morning. It was like a January morning or February morning, something like that. But anyway, I digress. I want to say it had to be a Big East team. Well, no, it could have been a MAC school. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not quite sure on that one. But to get back to your question, your main goal at Heinz Field, forever Heinz Field, is you try to just get to the game. There's not as much prior
Yeah.
fanfare unless you're, parking and tailgate and all that, which, that's awesome and that's great. And some weekends there's the Rib Fest going on down at Heinz
Okay.
Field. So you have
Yeah.
all the trucks, food trucks that are out there, and that's worth getting there early for. So just fill up on ribs and then go into the game.
Yeah.
A lot of things too that are happening here. People are going to some of the restaurants along the North Shore there between PNC Park and Heinz
Yeah.
Field, and they're eating there before the Pitt game. So that is very popular as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in between PNC Park and Heinz Field there that
And they keep building.
Bettis Grill and yeah, it's
Yeah,
uh
McFadden's, all the places that used to be there. Tilted Kilt, I don't know if that's still there,
yeah.
but that's one of the other places that were there.
Uh No chance of Pitt ever going back to a on-campus stadium, you think, huh?
That's a great question, and one I try to follow as much conversation about Pitt on Facebook that I can, especially now that I'm so far removed from it. And that question comes up at least a couple times throughout the year, like from semi-official sources. And when I say
Yeah,
that, I mean people that are affiliated with the program in one way or another, like they work in ticket sales or something like that, and they will answer someone's general question about it. And to be honest with you, Sean, I don't know how familiar you are with Oakland. There's just not a lot of space. You'd really have to tear down either businesses, which there's not as many as you would think in Oakland, but there's a lot of residences, especially in North Oakland, and that's kind of the direction you're heading with where Pitt Stadium and now Peterson Event Center is.
absolutely. Yeah, I've been there a few times, but never really like
Sure.
I wouldn't know if they had some offset area that they could put something on, kind of like with USF doing it. They're just outside Tampa enough to have some room to build a new
Mhm.
stadium, and I'm sure this subject will be brought up in a little bit when we talk about the future of Pitt football. But uh, what makes a game unique? A Pitt game unique?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. For a Pitt fan, it's unique because that's my team, so the win is gonna matter. I will say, at my age now, it doesn't have the impact it used to have, say, 20 years ago. If Pitt lost, it'd ruin my weekend. I'd need the Steelers to bail me out 'cause I'd be so miserable, so upset, and I think I kinda inherited that from my uncle. He was very passionate about the program, so when they would lose, he would get upset. There'd be some choice words. They may be yelled down to the field if we're still in the stadium, but he would let that carry with him throughout the rest of the day, and we'd have that 2-hour drive home from Pittsburgh. So it was definitely something that I think I inherited from him and just had to grow out of, and take my own path. But for someone who's there, and not necessarily a Pitt fan, maybe they got tickets or, they root for Notre Dame and go in there and root for Notre Dame. I don't think it carries the same experience that it would if it, 1, was on campus, and 2, if Pitt was just a more dominant program compared to some of these other programs that I've experienced. Like, I went up to the Florida State game this past season, when Pitt came down to Tallahassee, and that environment's electric, and Florida State had a really down year this year, but it's still electric. The fans are into it. Obviously, the
Well,
guy
Pitt
came
was there
out
when
with
they still had belief, right?
what's that?
Pitt was there early enough in the season they still had some belief, right?
For sure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, we were, and that's right when Hunchel, came in and, we were really starting to show some promise, with where the program could go, and Florida State at the time, was still, a middle of the road team, didn't know they had beaten Alabama at the beginning of the season, so you really didn't know what they were gonna be able to accomplish. Obviously, it didn't pan out for them, as the season went on, but it was still a huge win for Pitt. But that environment that I was in and I've seen in other campuses, you just don't have that at Pitt games, and I think and like you said, we kinda get to it, I think that'll kinda hurt Pitt moving forward as well,
yeah.
from a
With
fan base.
recruiting too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, I mean,
in
recruits
a
wanna
way,
come in and they wanna see that atmosphere.
yeah. But I guess one thing you could say makes Pitt a Pitt game unique is you go in and see all the Steelers history too. So
That's a good point.
it's almost like taking a walk down.
Well,
Uh,
the Coca-Cola Hall of Fame there is on
yeah,
the main concourse, that's what they call it. So they got the
yeah,
trophies there, they got the
yeah,
Steeler Hall of Fame set up to the right. Um, it's definitely an experience, and I'm glad you brought that up because to be honest with you, Sean, I've been there so many times, I
you don't
just
even look
take it
at
for
it
granted.
anymore.
I just
Yeah,
walk right past it and go right to my seats. When I had the boys, make sure they got what they needed before we go to the seats, but it was more businesslike than it was entertainment until the game started for
yeah,
me. But that's a very good point. And another thing, if someone can't afford Steeler tickets, but they want to experience a football game at Heinz Field, Pitt tickets is absolutely the way to go. They're much more affordable. They're still, like you said, a lot to see from the Steelers aspect, even though the Steelers themselves are not playing on the field.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, what would surprise someone that's never been to a game there?
Um, the stadium is huge. I mean, I know these college stadiums boast their seating capacity, but I've been in a few of those stadiums, and you're right on top of each other. The Heinz Field is nice, except in the upper deck there on the north end, I think it is, where it's bleachers. Everything else is individual seats. That's super rare in college
Yeah.
stadiums. So I think if you don't know that when you're going in and you have one of those seats, that would be really nice. I think the other thing is depending on where you're sitting, like if you're higher up, I like higher up seats because you can see the play develop. You can see a lot more things. Plus, depending on where you're at in the stadium, if you can see the river from your seats, that's
Mhm.
an amazing view. If you can see the city, if you're on the Pitt home side in the upper corner, north corner there, you can see the river and the city. Not as nice as PNC Park's view, but it's still
Yeah.
pretty neat. Um, the price for food and concessions is more affordable there than a lot of other places I've been at. So if you get these away fans that are coming in and they're coming into Heinz Field, surprisingly, the prices are much more affordable than some of the other college places I've been to.
Except for Coastal Carolina.
I haven't been there.
They have all you can eat tickets. Every ticket is now all you can eat.
You know
So,
what? Now that you say that, I think I did read something on ESPN not too long ago, maybe a month or so ago,
yeah, yeah.
about that. Is that something new they're doing?
I think they did it last year. They did it so that no matter when you come in, every I think it was non-alcohol, everything non-alcohol was free.
Of course.
So, good marketing tactic to get people to the stadium, I guess. Uh, so what's your thoughts on the program right now? Do you like Narduzzi? Do you think the program's headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I try to hold on to things. I don't want to say nostalgic, although I am in life, not with my sports teams. But I think you don't want to just walk away from something because I think a lot of times, especially not now with NIL, a lot of the power for a coach to build a program has kind of been taken away, where the coach isn't necessarily working with the players as much as he's working with the revenue source. If he can convince people to donate to his program to fund the NIL, then he can go and put on the charm and then bring the players with the money behind him. And, we can talk about NIL if you want, but I know that's not what you asked. Um,
No,
I'm
we
comfortable with my
we got off the rails a little bit last episode, so I don't mind going off the rails a little bit and talking about what's going on today.
that's all right, I can keep it focused. So with Pitt, I do think that Narduzzi still has something he can do there. I think that Pitt is one of those programs that they're not in a warmer climate. They don't have the environment that schools like Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, those northern schools have, and I don't think they'll ever be able to compete in that aspect with those programs. So just to slightly touch on the NIL, I think that'll help even the chances a little bit, depending on who they can get to support the NIL fund. And as a Pitt fan, I wanna see consistency. I love seeing players stay, but at the same point, I'm a realist. I understand that that's not today's college football
Yeah,
world. So it's having the kid, the freshman that we had last year stay. He announced it. Now, again, I don't know when the cutoff is. I think the portal's closed. I'm not sure when all that plays out. He said that he was staying. I like stuff like that.
you're talking about
Develop.
Henschel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Mason. So for me, that's what I want, but I know to win, you don't necessarily want all your kids to stay because they're not all gonna develop into what you need to play
yeah,
for championships. It's silly for a Pitt fan to talk about, like, national championships, and I know how that comes across, but just conference championships right now. Like, my son and I drove up to see Pickett win the ACC championship up in Charlotte,
yeah.
in 2021, December 2021 against, Wake Forest, and it was awesome, and I'm so glad that I spent the money to go, and, my buddy 2 houses down, grew up in the Keys, and he's a Miami fan, and we were talking about the national championship down here in Miami. I was like, "Oh man, your team's in it. You're going." He's like, "It's like $3,000 for a ticket." Well, I'm telling you right now, if
At
Pitt's playing the
least,
national championship, I'm paying $3,000 for a ticket. I'm going because
I
I may never see one again.
yeah, yeah. But rounding back to the question, do you think Narduzzi is the right answer right now, or do you
I
think
do.
you see so much more of colleges moving on for underperforming, and some places call 10-2 underperforming? Uh, so what,
Yeah, I just
like,
think it's hard to keep just changing. I don't want to
it
reference an
is,
NFL team, but you don't want to be the Cleveland Browns of college. You don't want to keep changing your coach thinking the coach is the problem.
but he's been there for how many?
Wow.
15 years, 10, 15 years.
It's definitely been a while for
Yeah,
sure, because I remember meeting him in the elevator in Heinz Field. We were going to the, recruiting thing they put on for season ticket holders. We
yeah.
talked Earl and I talked to him in the elevator. Um, I just, like,
I
I
get
don't
it. You're
know.
sentimental about it. I get it. I just wanted to ask the question because bringing the right person in could potentially bring in more money.
It
You
could,
know,
and that's a valid point, bringing in, you're always looking at youth.
that's what you're
Who's the
looking
next
for
hot
now. Is
coordinator kinda
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Because realistically, there's not very many powers in the ACC right now,
Mhm.
and some like it seems to be a changing of the tide right now. And
Especially with Clemson down and Florida State down.
now
Miami is
could
the
be
only.
a time to capitalize on that. If I'm just kind of asking the question, I was just
No,
wondering.
it's a fair point, and, fair counterpoint, I guess, from your end,
Yeah,
fair counterpoint to make, about it. And if it would happen, it's not like I'd be upset. I'd be like, "Okay,
yeah.
uh,
They want
they're
more.
the one making the decision. Let's see what this next guy can do." I don't think it'll happen while Heinzel's still there, though.
I think it might give Pitt fans some hope too. Like, hey, well, their record was what, 7-5, 8-4 this year,
Um, yeah, yeah, I think it was
maybe even nine
eh
and three.
no, it was because we lost the bowl game.
Okay,
Um, to be honest with you, I had a lot of stuff going on in my
yeah,
life, around that time, so, it's kinda, escaping me, but, um,
but to say that's not good enough anymore, that would be like, that would potentially give you guys hope, saying, "Hey, we have someone who wants to make the move," just like Indiana 2 years ago. They
yeah.
made the move, and they look where it got them. No one would have ever bet 2 years ago that Indiana would be where they are now.
Nope, and for me, I've seen these hypes in the past.
Yeah,
I remember when Walt Harris came in, and that was gonna change everything. Then Dave Wannstedt coming back to Pitt was gonna change everything. None of it panned out. None of it
yeah,
really became anything. Yeah, it's always nice when you bring in the next guy. Everybody wants the next guy. It's like I remember when, Kenny Pickett came in his freshman year. I saw him play his first college game, and I saw him play his last college game in his college career. And I remember when he came in, and people were like, "Oh, who's this kid?" I can't remember who he replaced. If it was like Bill Stahl or something, I could have the generation. It could be a gap there that I'm
that's
missing.
pretty close to
But
stall, yeah,
when he came in, there was excitement, but there was also like, "Why are you bringing this kid? It's too early," all this stuff, and here he became one of the, best Pitt quarterbacks, at least in the last
yeah,
10 to 15 years. So, I
yeah,
get the fresh face approach, but how many times have we seen
mhm,
that and the coach didn't pan out?
yeah, yeah,
So, it
I can see it from both ends. It there's that hope every year that you and the ACC get a spot in the playoff game,
that's it, and,
but
you know
Pitt hasn't made it happen yet.
no, I mean, the college playoff, though, is such a young thing compared to
Yeah,
college football in general, especially the 12-team playoff. And I know there's, the discussions about the 16 that continue to happen.
not this year.
Right, but the
Yeah,
discussions continue to happen.
yeah,
And they're going to continue to happen because there's going to be a push, because the playoff games, I guarantee, from a TV standpoint, are generating a lot more revenue than the bowl games. So, and the balance is the bowl games, playoff. How do you integrate the two? But either way, I feel that there's always opportunity for Pitt to make the playoffs. Just that one great year. If Pitt would have been 10-2, they would have been in the playoffs, because they likely would have beat Miami, so they would have been they likely would have been in the ACC championship at 10-2. So they definitely would have been in the ACC championship at 10-2
Absolutely.
when you got Virginia and Duke playing.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
apparently the ACC is making changes to their tiebreaker criteria so that doesn't happen
yes,
again.
yeah, they already
So,
did.
yeah.
Um, and I know too the ACC is trying to create more inter-conference play. So now there's 9 games
Yeah.
required in your schedule
Everyone's
and not
going
the 8.
everyone's going to 9. The Big 10 was there last year, the SEC starting this year. Uh it's going to make more things more of a meat grinder of a schedule for all teams, but those teams that go undefeated or come out of there with one loss, they're going to be pretty solid.
And I think it's good for college football because, we're as college football fans, we don't want to see your favorite team, Penn State, Pitt, Notre Dame, whomever. You don't want to see them. Not that Notre Dame plays FCS schools, but the rest of the teams basically do. Michigan, Alabama, they still play FCS schools. No one wants to see that.
And
You know,
that's one thing I'd like for them to find out. And it's never going to happen. I get it because you have such a meat grinder at 9 games, but somehow I'd like to see sort of like a bowl game at the beginning of the year. So instead of what your FCS school, don't allow them to play FCS school, like a round robin of there's 4 main conferences now: the Big 12, ACC, uh, SEC, Big 10.
mhm.
Have the number 5 team from the Big 10 play the number 5 team of the ACC, and
You mean
down the
how they
line.
finished the previous
Yeah,
year?
yeah, and I know the teams aren't going to be the same, but it will give more data to which conference is really superior, which strength of schedule is better. Uh, because if you have those teams that are mid tier playing against each other and the top team tiers playing against each other, for instance, the only really great game this year coming up in 2026, Ohio State versus Texas, out of conference, I mean.
Hmm.
And how is that going to, I think it's going to be a moot data point because we're not getting any of the other big SEC versus Big 10 teams playing. Or so it could be a one off game, it's not like
That's going to
we
be a
have more.
I'm sorry,
It's
that I
going
was
to be,
just gonna say that's a byproduct of having those 9-game conference
yeah,
schedules.
it
You're
is.
gonna
It is.
lose these non-conference games.
Yeah. And I wish more teams would do that is what I'm getting at is I think it should be required, in my opinion,
Yeah,
to
I get it.
provide that data point for an extra non-FCS game that
That's
but
okay, because 'cause I'd
you
rather
you
still
know what I'm
see
getting
Pitt
at.
play a MAC school or, an
Yeah.
American Conference school or something like that, a Sun Belt school. I'd
You'd
still
rather them
rather
go
see
to
that.
Oklahoma or go to Kansas or go to Michigan. You know what I mean? Just something out of conference that means something, not just, hey, we're gonna play Kent State this weekend.
Kent State is a MAC school, but
Yeah.
I just I don't see that happening because schools don't wanna risk like, you can lose to Pitt. You're probably not gonna lose to Kent State. So, a lot of schools don't wanna risk that because they don't wanna lose the Pitt early in the year and
Yeah.
then have to fight an uphill battle to hopefully make it into the playoffs because they know they still have their conference schedule coming.
Yeah. And that's why it'll never happen. And that's why I'm saying until it's a requirement, which would never happen, uh, it'll be continue to be cupcake, cupcake, cupcake conference.
Yeah,
So I don't know. There's a lot of things college football can fix. It's not going to get fixed anytime soon.
and it's funny, you could get different answers on how to fix it depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. So let's talk about that's a good segue. Let's talk about fixing Pitt football.
Okay.
How would you go about fixing? Not to say it's broken, but
Mhm.
how would you make the Pitt football experience better?
Well, I can tell you one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't start tarping off the upper sections of Heinz
Yeah.
Field because that is what they're going to be doing this coming year.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I wouldn't do because I've seen that done at Three River Stadium during Pirate games. I've seen it, back in the day. I think it. it sends the wrong message to the fan base, people watching on TV who just happen to tune in. Obviously, to your point earlier, the recruits. So I think that's almost conceding by doing something like that. I think too, in order to turn the program around, you have to get people excited. You have
Yeah.
to get people within the program that are already in there excited so they stay. Because that's going to be the big thing now is not just bringing kids in through the NIL, is retaining kids to not go back to the portal. You want to get them excited. Coaching change, as you mentioned, would be a possibility. I think too, they're going to have to change how they market the team. These teams, not as much as the pro teams, but these teams are still businesses. They're still a
Yes.
product. So you have to market the product better. And some of these bigger schools do such a better job at marketing their product. And I've always felt that Pitt just doesn't market their product as well as, Penn State and Ohio State, which are the two, bookend programs geographically where Pitt sits. And I think if they find a way to make Pitt exciting just from an entertainment standpoint, it'll help everything else come to play. Now, again, the product on the field is always going to be the number one thing.
Yeah.
The field increases. If Pitt would have the seasons that these other programs I keep mentioning, I'm not going to keep saying their names, but if Pitt could do what they're doing season after season after season, then I think everything else would start to fall into
It
place.
would. It would, yeah. But to a point where you're selling out every game, I don't know.
Well, I'm always going to be in the minority in my friends group because most of my friends and family are Penn State fans or some Notre Dame fans in my friends group, but and down here it's Michigan, Miami, all the other schools. But I feel that Pitt being an urban college is definitely a disadvantage. Now, I know there's
Yes.
other urban schools that are successful, but let's be honest, most of these schools that are successful are in the middle of nowhere in these college towns, and they are what you do on a
Yeah.
Saturday morning or, a Saturday morning, going to tailgate and all that stuff, but then going to the game and everything else. Like Steeler Sunday, that is a real thing. It's like Pittsburgh shuts down for the
Yeah.
Steelers. It doesn't do that for Pitt because you're not all Pitt fans in
Mhm.
Pittsburgh. Whereas if you're in State College, you're likely a Penn State fan. If you're in the geographic area around State College, you're likely a Penn State fan. Most Philadelphians are Penn State fans. So because of Penn State being where they're at and Ohio State being where they're at and, Michigan and Ann Arbor, all these things, the majority of your bigger programs are going to be, those non-city schools. Now, Miami's obviously,
Yeah.
a city school and they're a much smaller school. They're a private school and they have a huge fan base, but they won. God,
And a
did they,
huge NIL budget.
but yeah, even before that though,
Yeah.
they were winning. They became a household name
Mhm.
back in the day. And Florida State, it's right in the middle of Tallahassee. Not that Tallahassee's the biggest city in Florida, but it's still a decent sized city.
Yeah.
And the campus is literally right in the middle of the city. So
That's kind
I
of like
understand.
Columbus too, though, right? It's not a
I've
giant
never been to
city,
Ohio
but
State. Is it right in Columbus? I don't know.
yeah. But it's not like it's a huge city either,
Yeah,
but
compared to Pittsburgh, but
yeah.
I know there's people in my life that don't like that argument. I get the cop out nature of it. It's just I'm
It's
acknowledging the
valid though,
logical
but
applicability.
yeah, definitely. It's definitely a valid point. Like we were talking about earlier with the stadium, if they would have an on-campus stadium, do you think more students would go to the games?
I definitely do, because having been in that student group for a couple years, it was much easier to get up and just walk up Cardiac Hill than it is to get on a shuttle and go down to Heinz Field. But I will say the students do, for the most part, still get to those games
Yeah.
on the north side. I think that you would have because the other thing that you need that infrastructure around the stadium. Like,
Mhm.
I've been to that game in State College and you got the field, you got the parking area, and it's just there's so much space beyond the stadium. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Oakland would ever be able to support that.
Yeah. I was just thinking because it all starts with the students and the at the university too. I mean,
Sure.
you have to make them excited and making them, like you said, get on a shuttle and take what? How long does it take? About a half hour to get to the game?
Depending on traffic, but
Yeah.
if you go early enough, you could probably get because it's only 2 miles.
Oh,
But with
okay.
city traffic, maybe I don't know, 15, 20 minutes with the stoplights and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's no real one answer, as you know in life, Sean. There's no quick fix to anything that you want to improve. It's always
Mhm.
going to be, baby steps, micro management type situations that you fix
Yeah.
this and then this gets fixed and a little bit of dominoes fall in your favor. But in the end, it's going to be the product on the field. If they win year after year after year, everything else will start to fall into place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what does future success look like?
You definitely need the talent. The quarterback, as we know,
Mhm.
drives success in college. Whereas pros, you can have a great defense and a mediocre quarterback and still win Super Bowls. College, it's very hard to have. Look at Texas Tech. They had a great defense. They just didn't have the talent necessary to continue to win. So I think if you can really secure that generational from a Pitt standpoint quarterback,
Yeah.
like even better than what Kenny Pickett was for Pitt. Now, again, remember we're staying in the Pitt universe here. You need a guy that can step in, and he could play at Alabama, he could play at Penn State, he could play at Notre Dame. But whether it's NIL opportunity, whether it's family went there, or the right coach said the right thing to his ear, whatever it was, he goes to Pitt and just wins. And he's like, "Well, I don't want to go anywhere else because I'm going to win here. I'm going to keep winning." I think that's something that could really, change the stars, so to say, to quote A
Yeah.
Knight's Tale. I think it could change the stars for Pitt. It's just that like that Dan Marino type experience, grow up in Oakland Catholic, go to high school right on Pitt campus, get a kid like that, that could change things, and that can encourage other kids to go there. And by the
Mhm.
time this stud's a junior, if he stays, he can get some of those transfer portals, get a better line, get a better defense, and all of a sudden now Pitt's on a national landscape. And that then starts, having paying off dividends down the road. Oh, no, Pitt, I didn't know. I like those jerseys. I like, the way they have the campus set up or whatever the kid's looking for.
Yeah.
I think that would really change, and then the fans would come, and the excitement, and now the recruits going there and seeing the excited fans. So I think it's just focusing on those key positions
Yeah.
on the team, and then building your team around that.
Okay. So circling back to success in 2026 is it end of the year. What would you say would be a good year for Pitt?
Well, I can't sit here and be like, we need to be undefeated or we need to be 10-2 or whatever. And I haven't really gone through the schedule. They just put it together and put it out not too long ago. Um, but if we could get back to the ACC championship, and it's very doable, as you
Mhm.
were alluding to earlier, Sean, for any team in the ACC to make the ACC championship, that would be a step in the right direction. I'm not gonna be, close-minded or whatever the term would be, like, to think, "Oh, we can make the playoffs next year." I think there's too many good teams in the national landscape based on what we've seen this year for a team like Pitt to kinda break through, unless they have some upset wins.
Yeah.
Should have pulled up their schedule as part of
I
this.
have their schedule pulled up here. It looks pretty advantageous for Pitt. They start off with Miami of Ohio,
Yeah,
uh,
I know they have an FCS
UCF,
school.
Syracuse, and then Bucknell. You go at Virginia Tech, which who knows what they'll be this year. I know
Yeah, Virginia Tech was so down, though, and I know they got,
yeah. It's gonna
former
be
Penn
hard for the
State
first year to
coach.
come in, but
Um,
then you got North
I mean, I
Carolina
see at
at Boston
least
College,
2
at Georgia Tech, but then
losses.
you get Georgia Tech at home.
Yeah, and
You get
I
Florida
do
State at
think
home, at
Georgia Tech
Louisville,
is gonna be
at
beatable.
Cal. I mean, the travel's gonna be tough for the Cal.
Yeah, and it's on Halloween, so it'll be a little cooler up there. I don't think there's any way we beat Miami at Hard Rock. Um
Yeah,
UCF, I mean, UCF's one of those teams. They can be great one year and fall off the map the next, so they're really hard to predict. I don't think Florida State's gonna have
yeah,
another down year, so that's gonna be a tough game, even though it's up in Pittsburgh in mid-November. Um, I know Louisville, we lost to them, but we should have won that game. So I think even with Louisville being ranked, I guess 14th or whatever, maybe that's what I don't know where they came up with that ranking there on FB schedules. I think Cal's beatable. I think North Carolina is going to be a coin flip. Who's to say what Belichick brings in this year?
but the schedule's very advantageous for them this year, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I'd say 8-4 is very possible with these games.
Yeah. I was even thinking a little bit better than that.
I don't know. I mean,
Would you consider that as a success as a Pitt fan?
I consider it a step in the right direction. You always want to do better than you did in the previous year. If you think you're going to come back and win 5 more games than you did the previous year without making any major changes, how does that happen? What major
Yeah.
change did Pitt make to
Yeah.
all of a sudden, have a 10-2 season? I didn't see it.
I haven't seen any portal
Um,
moves,
but
that's like, I follow the portal and everything
yeah,
like that, but I haven't seen any really the big names go to Pitt. Have you had any departures?
yeah, and I'm not. I know that I think Desmond Reed, that was number 0, their stud running back till he started getting a little injury prone towards the end of the year. I think he declared, if I'm not mistaken, for the draft.
Okay.
If so, that'll be a severe impact. And then I'm pretty sure one of the guy had like 5 sacks. God, the names are escaping me right now because I'm thinking about, all this other stuff we were talking about. But the guy had like 4 or 5 sacks in the bowl game. I'm pretty sure he went into the portal or is entering the portal or whatever the case may be. And I think one
Okay.
of their other stud linebackers is declaring for the draft. So
Okay.
there's departure in that way. But just to kind of add a quick disclaimer, I know based on, some of the things that you're planning to do with this program, there's going to be a lot of people that you're going to interview that's going to have a
Mhm.
higher college football acumen than I do. I just don't follow the game as closely as some other people do. So there might be stuff that I'm saying, it's like, oh, and I'm not saying you're saying, I'm just saying I'm kind of listening to myself as it's coming out of my mouth. Um, but that's just how I see it when I watch, the games. I'm usually watching it next door.
Yeah.
My neighbor has his out garage. We will watch the games in there. We've got 2 TVs up now. Um, and I live my little Pitt world, my little Pitt fan world. I just hope that they do
Yeah.
something to try to improve things somewhere, or I'm gonna have a long season again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could have been worse. You could have been on the Florida State side sitting in Doak Campbell this year,
Yeah,
losing to
yeah, and
Pitt, and you know what I mean?
I
They had so
do.
much
When I
hope
walked
after
in that
week 1.
stadium, I got a lot of chirping when I walked in because, of course,
Yeah.
I'm wearing, Pitt stuff, all that, and
Yeah.
I'm just minding my own business because I don't wanna be that guy, that visiting fan, but I could have chirped my whole way out of that stadium, and I didn't. I walked out with class. We won a big game. I was excited about it, but I wasn't going to be a jerk about it, because I was
Yeah.
still in their
Yeah.
stadium. And I felt bad for them because I knew what that loss was feeling like for them because I could see it in their faces.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cruel world, this game, but uh one thing that never changes is the traditions, and that's circling back. That's why I want to do this show, to learn more about the traditions, to learn more about the fans who make this sport real. So, all right, let's go
Yeah. And,
into our rapid fire here. First
okay.
thing that comes to mind, uh, favorite Pitt player ever. You can name a couple. I won't ding you for that.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's Curtis Martin. I got to see him play in person during his career at
Hmm.
Pitt, and he was so electric.
Okay. Uh, favorite Pitt win.
It would have to be the ACC championship.
Yeah.
Just watching them and, again in person, doing that, it was next level for me Pitt's just been mediocre for so long, and for them to reach that level at that time and experience it with my son, it was amazing.
Most painful Pitt loss.
It was probably, and I can't remember what year, but I remember being at Heinz Field. We were sitting in 200 section underneath the north end zone, so lower half all the way in the back. And if Pitt would have beat Miami there, we would have went to the Orange Bowl. And we lost to Miami, and everyone had oranges there, and I was just sitting there and like stunned, like I couldn't believe, we had our chance to go to a major bowl and we blew it, and all remember smelling it is oranges. Just it was
Yeah.
devastating.
One word to describe Pitt fans.
Um, Committed, because they have to be, right? If you're still a Pitt fan now, you have to be committed no matter what.
How would you get the younger generation interested in Pitt football? How would you get the next generation to choose Pitt as their team? Would you go back and show them Dan Marino and Larry Fitzgerald highlights? What that's those are
Yeah,
two giant names that come
it's a
from there.
hard, quick answer.
Mhm.
I think again, you leverage marketing because kids nowadays they attach themselves to that. Create those short little videos and get those videos going out. I mean, that's what kids live off of now, and have current Pit students create videos and put it into like a Pit Instagram page, or whatever kids use today, TikTok, whatever, and just create that excitement. Like I want to be part of that family.
Yeah, makes sense. Uh, what is one tradition you do on a game day? Whether you're at the let's go both. If you're at the game, going to the game, or you're sitting at home watching, do you have a tradition you do for each of those?
At the games, I always wanted to get there early enough to see the band.
Yeah,
I feel that's a major part of college tradition, and I really did enjoy the presentation from the pit band, the Golden Girls that come out and do their dances and stuff with the batons, and it's definitely an experience you're not going to get in any other sporting event. Um, when I'm watching the game from afar, I try to watch as much pregame about the Pitt game as I can. So I'll have game day on and, all that stuff. Um, but to me, if I can watch like ACC Huddle and they're talking about the Pitt game, I want to listen to it because I may not be as familiar with the other team that Pitt's playing. So it kind of gets me up to speed and gets me amped up for the game. And I'll recognize the names when they're talking about them in real time.
absolutely, absolutely. Uh, this is kind of a twofer question. I'll go one by one though. Favorite logo?
Favorite Pitt logo?
Yeah, because
I,
they've
I'm a
had a
little,
few.
yeah, I like this one. This is
Uh
from
huh.
back in the day. So I do like that. Obviously, the Pitt script is super famous. I love that as well. A lot of my stuff is either this, which is older than the Pitt script, or the Pitt script. The one I don't like is the one that looks like the FIU. I think it's FIU Panther.
The newer
It's
one,
got what's that?
the newest one.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of it, mainly because it's another, it looks very similar to one of those
Yeah,
either FIU or FAU. I think it's FIU, but I don't like it. But it's not the one that I hate the most. The one I hate the most is the Walt Harris year. The one with the two little corners and the pit head kind of looking to the side, and it's when Pitt had those darker blue and gold
yeah.
colors. I just didn't like that logo. I'm sure I have stuff somewhere in this room that has it on it, but it didn't fit. It felt forced. They tried to
Yeah.
change too much in too short of a time.
So bouncing off that, favorite uniform combo.
It's definitely got to be the blue and gold that you're seeing today that Pitt's
So you don't
wearing.
like the logo, but you like the colors because it
Well, well,
bounces back to
Well, no, the Pitt script is the colors that you see today. That's
okay.
from the Pitt script years. That's from the Dan Marino years. What I'm talking about is like when Larry Fitzgerald played. I didn't like those colors. I didn't like that logo. I felt that it was too far and it was just too odd.
Yeah,
And the colors I think you were trying to be too formal with it and going away from what you're known for, which is the blue and gold, for lack of a
yeah,
better way to describe the colors. So those jerseys I absolutely love. The blue jerseys with the yellow pants. I think it just and then the yellow helmet with the Pitt blue script, I think it just pops.
Okay.
And it's so unique. There's no other
Yeah.
program that looks like that.
Yeah. I can't think of one. Uh, I think that's about it. Do you have anything to add? You'd like to add?
No, just going back to one of your quick fire questions. I know Curtis Martin just sits with me, but if I could pick two and you did give me the option and I kind of, deer in headlights with it is obviously Larry Fitzgerald. It was amazing. I got to see him play up in Boston College. Earl and I went up, and he had this one grab in the end zone. It was like this kid's destined for greatness.
Yeah.
So him, Curtis Martin, two the best that Pitt's ever had in those respective positions. But no, I'm just, as we've talked before, I'm excited about what you're trying to create here, what the potential of this program
Yeah.
is. I know you. I know you know college football. A lot. I'm trying to think. Like you have an in-depth knowledge of college football. Your general acumen of the
Yeah.
sport is high. So I can't wait to see what you do with it. And if I have the opportunity to come on again, if we're talking about, one of the trips that I made or you made or whatever this coming year. I just, want to see what you can do with this. And I know there's going to be so much potential waiting for you there, man. I'm so excited.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I do have one more. What's your favorite trip you made so far? If you had to pick one,
Yep,
you can narrow it
absolutely.
down to
So,
top three if you need to. Just
nope, I could definitely pick the top one. It was 2012, Pitt Notre Dame. Uh, Earl and I
mhm.
drove out. It was the first year where he started letting me pay for everything. Like before, like when I was super young in my early 20s, he'd pay for a lot of it. Then as I got older, we started splitting the cost. But 2012, we made three different trips: Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and Buffalo, and I paid for everything: tickets, hotel, drove, the Cobalt, all that good stuff. And so having that experience with him and, he's passed away a couple years ago now or a year and a half ago. So I always have that memory with him. But it was a night game. Notre Dame, I think, was number 2 in the country. We went out there not with, but a coworker of mine in Altoona. I was working in Altoona at the time, Pennsylvania. She and her family go to a Notre Dame game every year, and that was the one they were going to. And they were pros going to Notre Dame. So they told us which hotel to stay at, uh, where to park. We followed them in the morning. We got there at like 6 in the morning, tailgated all day. Her mom and her aunt took me on a tour through the campus because Earl didn't want to go, where I got to see the grotto. I got to see the mist coming off the lake there between Holy Cross and Notre Dame. It was like so many experiences that you see in the movie Rudy. I got to see firsthand. And then we get to the game, and Pitt almost wins the game, Sean. It goes into triple overtime, and Pitt's kicker misses a field goal, and then Notre Dame kicker makes it. I think that's the order it went.
Mhm.
Could have been the other way around, but either way, Notre Dame won by 3. And so we almost beat the number 2 team in the country at that time in 2012 in their stadium on their field. And it was so devastating, but it was so exciting at the same time because of what we almost just did. And we can talk about this in other, episodes or whatever, but one of the things that I grade experiences when I travel on is how do the opposing fans treat you? And I had people coming up to me, shaking my hand, saying, "Man, you guys played awesome. We almost, lost it there, but it was a great game." And they were almost congratulating us on how well we did in the loss.
Yeah.
It's just I've never experienced anything like that before, and it just says a lot about the Notre Dame fan base as a whole
Mhm.
that they weren't rubbing in our faces that they beat us. So that by far, will be. And I went to games with my family. I drove to Tennessee from here. Went to Oklahoma State from Pittsburgh. So I've been to some places with my family, but they don't love the sport like Earl did, and it's
Yeah.
not Notre Dame. There's only one Notre Dame, so it was
And that
just
was
by
my
far the
my
best
first
thing.
episode was with a Notre Dame fan, so we just talked
That's
about all
awesome.
those things you mentioned. So,
Yeah, it's amazing experience. I got to see the team coming out of the church, all that stuff. It was really cool.
yeah, that's I told him maybe next year. I already have some trips planned for this fall, but maybe next year him and I will try to get to South Bend so he can show me around. Uh, all right. One last question. When you think about Pitt football, what's the first memory that comes to mind? Just something to end on.
Sure. So I remember, it's, coincidental that I'm talking to you, Sean, but I remember, I don't know if I was like 7 or 8 or something like that. I just remember, the Pitt chant where they go PITT, let's go Pitt in the middle of their victory song.
Mhm.
The Pitt fans yell PENNST sucks. They don't do it as much now as they did it
Yeah,
back in the day because the rivalry was stronger back in the day because, we played you guys more often. But as a little kid, you're hearing that. And, obviously you're a Pitt fan and where you live is Penn State country. So you're going to jump in on it. So I just remember standing up on the bleachers doing that with the band. And Sean was beside me, and I can't remember what he said, or if he looked at me weird, like, "What are you doing?" or "Why are you doing that?" or something like
yeah,
that. It's just he would be able to explain it better to me, but that was one of my earlier memories that was just seared in, just because that was when we were starting to become, that the house divided that you
yeah.
hear of these families rooting for two different teams.
Alright, well, thank you, Dave, for your time tonight. I appreciate
Absolutely,
you coming on. Uh,
yeah,
we'll have to touch base in the future if we wanna plan another one of these. We can talk about the conferences and how the Big East has got how they moved from the Big East to the ACC and all that. That's something we could talk about. Uh, but that's it for today's story.
okay,
If you're a college football fan and you have a story, I wanna hear it. Uh, reach out to me, send me a DM, comment on the video. Uh, I wanna be able to tell your story. And with that, this is Saturdays and Stories. I'll see you next week.